today we are joined with by Simone, who is a homeschooling mom of 5, and it's her 13th year homeschooling. She used all of our Footprints programs, but that's not actually the reason that she's here today. We've been talking about homeschool stereotypes and how they don't always fit the pretty little house on the prairie picture. So it's interesting that Simone can share from her perspective, because all the way through her homeschooling journey, she was self-employed and being an editor and a publisher of a small bulletin monthly magazine, as well as a digital designer and events coordinator. So that's quite a lot that you had on your plate there with 5 kids. And Shirley also has been, well, Shirley and I both have obviously been working part-time, and Shirley's for the last year or so been working full-time and homeschooling. So I'm going to throw this open to both of you and jump in. And Simone, maybe you want to tell us a little bit of your journey, how you came to homeschooling and how the duality of being a work-at-home mom as well worked for you guys.
Well, the journey started because we were living in Cape Town and an opportunity came for us to move to a small town called Villiers-Dorp. And although there was a good school in the area, it was geared for the Afrikaans children, and all the non-speaking Afrikaans children were piled into one class. And I wasn't crazy about the setup, and my oldest daughter was struggling a little bit at school. The teacher was leaning a little bit towards, she's struggling to sit still for long periods, and with my teaching background, I knew where it was leading, and I knew there was nothing wrong with my child. She just needed a different approach. So we decided to start homeschooling then when she started grade 1, and never looked back. I mean, obviously we've had our moments where I want to tear my hair out, but it's been an amazing journey. And my oldest daughter, Hannah, she actually just completed her last GED exam on Tuesday.
Well done.
Excellent. What a lovely milestone.
Yes, it's been very exciting. So yeah, that's kind of the beginning to now, and been working from home with various little things, a lot to do with design, digital design mostly, and yeah, it was easier when I only had Hannah, and now that I've just finished with Hannah, so now I have 4 in my classroom. It is more tricky and more challenging, and trying to put in the work at the same time is hard. But we live and learn.
We do.
So how have you dealt with that, the struggle that we all tend to struggle with, especially when we're new homeschoolers, of having this idea of what you think a homeschooling mom should be, but your reality probably wasn't like that ideal?
Well, I think having only one child in my homeschool classroom made it very easy. I thought, this is not so bad. What's everybody struggling with? But once I got 2, 3, 4 in the classroom, 5 at a time, then it really, reality set in. But yeah, I think, as I've mentioned before, I was very, fortunate to start with Footprints. It was recommended to me by a friend. And so I didn't have this sort of difficult start. I started with something beautiful, something I loved, something my child loved, and it had a nice flow and easy to follow. So I was very fortunate with that. And so by the time my other kids started joining, I had a better sense of where I was and where I was going and what I was doing. So it was much easier for me, I must say.
Sure.
Would you describe yourself as quite an organized, structured person, or the kind of person who just can be flexible and just, you know, adapt and go with the flow of whatever's happening in your home?
I can be both, actually. So I'm very organized, but when the wheels come off, I can adapt. And the wheels come off more than the plan is stuck to very often. So I'll have a plan. And I sit down and I organize my schedule for the week, and the wheels come off almost always. So I prefer to be structured, but I can handle the wheels coming off. The wheels come off this week. I've got an event that I'm organizing for this Saturday. So my kids are doing schoolwork, but they only have to do maths and reading. So yeah, so we do the necessities, and they do it mostly by themselves. And then they'll say, okay, mommy, I'm finished, and I'll come and mark it. Or sometimes the older kids will mark the younger ones. So yeah.
And when they're not doing maths and English, they're soaking up whatever's happening in your lives and your world, and they're learning stuff that's not in the books. So yeah.
especially sort of the older ones are learning to, please go and dress your sister. Please make sure she's brushed her teeth. Can someone please, or, go hang up the washing? Have you done all your chores? So the managing of the household gets pushed up a little bit because they need to do it for me when I'm busy.
But that in itself is a life lesson. And I think that people who've watched any of our videos long enough is that I keep saying we are so focused on this academic portion of their lives, but we forget that they're going to spend the majority of their lives as adults, where those things, the hanging up the washing, the cooking meals, the looking after a younger sibling or their own child one day, actually will take up more of their lives than the sitting at the desk and learning to read and write. So, I think it's always that paradigm shift in our thinking that homeschooling, and Shirley, you said this last week, is that it's other lessons in these busy times, as when we are juggling balls or we've got things coming up. I mean, Shirley, you and I thinking of our expos, we would have to fly out the Thursday night or the Friday morning and get back, and we're exhausted after the expo on a Monday and, have to catch our breath. Those were the times where they picked up the pieces, our children, in the home, so that we could do this thing. And you know what? Still standing. No, they haven't fallen apart yet.
And the thing is that when our kids are doing those kind of chores, it's not just the competency to do the chore that they're learning. It's actually developing their self-confidence. It's giving them the understanding of people can rely on me, people are trusting me, and it's building things into their character that makes them believe I can do stuff, people can rely on me. And I think those are important traits to have that give them confidence for life as well. So it's not just that they're good at doing the laundry and cooking a meal for 6 or 8 people, it's confidence, which so many people lack.
No, I agree with you. And I mean, I also know that something for me in particular, when Hannah was a baby, she had reflux and she just needed to be carried all the time. Mm-hmm. And so once she could start sitting, I was so worried she was going to be somebody who needed to cling on me so much that I used to leave her and just walk out the room, even though I didn't need to leave the room, just to leave her by herself to try and teach independence. And that's really started quite young. And independence has been so important to me with my children, that they learn to do things for themselves. And so, yes, they make a mess because at 5, they know how to make their own sandwich, but they're not so good at packing it away. But the lesson of learning to make a sandwich is so important. And so, we deal with the mess, and then we've got older ones. Your chore is to clean the kitchen. So they're finding the balance, but the lesson that's learned in the mess is important.
Yeah. I like that. The lesson that's learned in the mess. Is that what you said?
In the mess.
In the mess. Shirley, in terms of, because you asked Simone the question, is she quite structured? Is she quite loose? Where would you place yourself on that spectrum?
Oh, I think her answer is a good one, because I like to have a basic plan, but as she says, when the plan doesn't work out, then you just have to be flexible and wing it. Mm-hmm. So, some kind of plan, and for me, gives me a guideline of what I want my children to be doing. And then it gives them an idea of what I'm expecting them to be doing when I'm not around. And then it gives you something to measure how things have gone. And this is only really in terms of book work and traditional schoolwork. If I think of what's happened in the season where I've had to work full time for an employer, I really haven't been as involved with the book work of my children as much as I was before. And I've just been sort of looking at things and realized that because I'm not there doing so many things with them, some of them have really taken that time and are using it to develop skills. Like my one child is doing a lot of drawing, way more than any of my other children did at the same age, but she's got the time now. And I don't know where that's going to go, whether it's going to become a career or just become a hobby, but it's teaching skills and it's constructive. And I think I probably wouldn't have emphasized art as much anyway, because we tend to do maths and science and history and social studies, and sort of art is kind of a Friday activity or by the way activity when we feel like it. And it's a good thing. It develops part of the brain and it's a skill, and maybe it is going to become something. So, part of me wants to panic and think, oh, I'm not doing the same for these 3 children as I did for the older 3. But we don't all get the same life path. And so the younger 3 have learned, like Simone said, to do chores that that I would have perhaps picked up more before. I mean, my 10-year-old can cook a supper for 8 people, and it's not just, you know, baked beans on toast. It's a proper meal, which I couldn't do at 10. I think it's fantastic, but it's just because everybody has a turn, and he's had his turn. And in the beginning, an older sibling or myself would help him. But that's what they do to give me a break. Everybody cooks one night of the week. And so I can cook when I feel like it, which is a real luxury. But I'm juggling a lot of balls. And so that's my family's way of supporting me. And it's good for them, you know. And when the season ends, then maybe things will change. So you can't just look at the books. You know, it's not just about bookwork.
Yeah, that brings me back to something that Simone said right at the beginning. And we don't generally do plugs on our informal chats for footprints. But I would like to ask the question, do you think, Simone, if you had started off with something that is more sort of school-based, that insisted on testing and exams and assignments being put in, that it would have been more difficult for you to work as well as oversee an education style like that, or easier?
No, definitely. As I said, I did come from a teaching background, and everyone told me it would take me 6 years to get the teacher out of me, and that was so true. And if I had gone on to a more school at home program, I think it would be even harder for me, because that box ticking puts so much pressure on you. And it doesn't form that character building situation that you can have with your children. You don't form that relationship with your children when you box ticking and they pushing against you, you pushing against them. So to start with a really nice and formal literature-based curriculum was such a blessing for me. I could sit on the couch with my child, read a book, discuss it with her, have conversations with her, go to the library to do research with her, you know, really go at her pace. And it really made it a much more relaxed environment and far less box ticking.
I agree. Yeah. Shirley, is there anything that you'd like to add? Otherwise, I think that I only have... Sorry?
Our time is almost up, yeah. So I think we should close. I think it's just to reiterate the message that we've been trying to convey, that every home is different and we all go through different seasons. And the season you're in now might not always be the season you're going to be in, for good or for bad. It can go either way. But in every season and in every situation, your children can still learn, and they're valuable lessons to learn, whether they're from books or from watching mom juggle all the things she's trying to cope with, you know.
And then, I mean, I've got my 2 sayings that got me through many years of busyness, whether it was just the book sales or whether it was footprints or whatever, was to dwell in your reality and rejoice. You know, if you're always looking over the fence into somebody else's garden and you're thinking, that's better, what they're doing is more important than me, they've got all their ducks in a row, you don't actually fully give yourself over to where you are. And there's that constant internal struggle about you measuring yourself to other people. So for homeschool moms that have to work in anywhere along the spectrum, I would just say put on those blinkers and focus on your family and what is best for you in that season, and give yourself over to it completely.
Yes, I agree, 100%.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Simone. It was lovely to have another face here. I'm sure our viewers will enjoy it, besides just our 2 talking heads.